Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Shooting the Breeze. As usual, I am Matt, also known as Soda and other. That was weird. And as usual, I'm joined by my co-host Ben, who seems very transfixed on what's going on in his computer. How you doing, Ben?
Good. How are you?
Oh, just enjoying a night in and doing what I like to do and talk to people. And this week we actually have someone none of us have actually met face to face before on Darren Wright, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So how are you doing? Introduce yourself a little bit.
All right, my name's Darren. I'm from England in the UK, and I've been around this community for a good couple of years, but I've been trying to get more involved and actually talk to people and get to know people face to face. And this is my first time live, so I'm here to talk about why I love movies.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So yeah, you said you're here to talk movies. So what was it about movies that you wanted to actually talk about this week?
So my particular joy of movies is in the storytelling. There's particular movies that you can watch and they're just, oh, that was fun. And then there's movies that make me get completely lost. Like I feel like I'm watching the screen and nothing else in the world exists. And that's where my love of movies came from and where my love of this community came from. It's like we all love the same things about movies, but I wanted to talk about particular things in movies that make you gravitate to them more than others.
Okay. Well, what makes you gravitate more to a movie?
So it can be like a certain way a song is used or a particular moment in a character's arc in a story. And then it might be something like, even if that character's having a really bad time in a film or dies in that film, it's how they show that and the way the music portrays it. And that's how I gravitate to a certain thing in a story, even if it's only a part of a film. I will love that film forever because that part particularly gripped me. So that's my particular love of films like that.
I've got an example of that where somebody dies and the music helps. Spoilers, Tony Stark passes away in Endgame.
Yeah.
That music cue, the song "The Real Hero." As soon as I got out of the theater, I texted my friends. It's like, when I die, if you don't play this on my funeral, I'm coming back to haunt your ass. Because that is a beautiful cue because it starts right as he's dying and then it carries over right into the funeral and you see like all the major players from his life and like the beautiful scene with the daughter and whatever, and it's just like that music. Every time I hear it, it always brings back those emotions, right?
Yeah, it's the emotive cue that I think is not using words. It's if that's such a thing as an emotive cue, but it's something that clicks you on to not what you should be feeling. It's how does it make you feel? So every person that's watching that particular scene gets a different feeling.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty in film for me. It's first example I thought of was when I came up with a list of things I could talk about is Chris Evans' death scene in the film Sunshine.
Okay.
So it uses a very subtle version of Adagio for Strings, which is the theme song of the film, but it uses it underwater, so it takes you into the actual feeling of how that person must have been feeling when he was struggling to survive, and you know that he's not going to. And that emotive cue is you feel kind of like claustrophobic with him, and you're like, you want him to succeed, but you know he's not, and the music helps guide you through it. And that's what brought me on to the suggestion of this topic tonight. Is there any other films like that other people think of, or is it just me?
Well, I don't know what exactly it is that draws me, because I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, my top 3 favorite movies generally are underdog stories. Like it's Rocky's number 1, A League of Their Own is number 2, and Tommy Boy's number 3. All 3 vastly different films, but they all have one thing in common, and it's about the underdog. League of Their Own, it's about the women trying to find their place in sports. Tommy Boy, it's about him trying to get out from under his father's shadow and show him that he's not actually a screw up and he can actually be a salesman. And of course, Rocky he just wants the opportunity to show the world that he actually has something to offer. He just needs that one chance. So I think that's more what I gravitate towards, more the underdog story, because in my personal life, I've always felt like the underdog. Like I've always had, not like physically or whatever, but I've always had like, I've always had shit going against me. It's just like I'm always trying to prove myself and stuff. So I kind of gravitate. I understand the underdog aspect of that.
Yeah, and it's all when you you don't necessarily see that in every film, but there can be a part of a film which a character or a scene particularly makes you feel that way, and that's what can take you to certain films other than others.
Yeah, well, the example is in Rocky. There's a scene right before the day. I think it's the night before the fight, where he goes and he walks to the arena and he looks around, and then he comes back and he sits down in bed and he says to agents like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, all I wanted was this shot, but this guy's the best, and I don't know if I'm worthy of it. And it turns out, yeah, he is worthy of it. It takes him to the distance, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. What about you, Ben?
I think one of the things that gets me the most every time I watch it is the end of Logan, when he dies in Laura's hand. Oh God. And she's at the grave, and then the tuning of the clocks. That gets me in the heart every time.
100%. And if you think about the foreshadowing in the Wolverine, where I can't remember the character's name, but she says you're gonna die with your heart in your hand, and what happens? He dies holding his daughter's hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I have that movie poster on my wall. I have the movie poster where he's holding her hand with his claws extended, because that is as you're 100% right. That is a beautiful scene.
It gets me every time.
And that's the beauty of films, because it doesn't always have to be the whole film that makes you love something more than other films. It can just be a certain moment, which is what I've always gripped onto. It's like there's certain moments of certain films, and I will love that film just because of that place.
Yeah. And like another one we were talking about the other day, Ben, when we did our top 5 historical movies, was The Patriot. We were talking about the scene where he goes to visit his family on the island, and as he's leaving, his daughter breaks down and is like, don't go. I'll talk. I'll do anything you want. Just please don't go.
Right. Oh, God.
Have you ever seen that movie, The Patriot, there, Darren?
No, I haven't. No. This has been the beautiful thing. One of the most beautiful things of being in this community as well this last couple of years. I've had so many new recommendations for stuff that I've never seen or never thought I would see.
Yeah. So I would
up for the future.
I would recommend it. It's a Mel Gibson film, so it all depends on how you feel.
I know which one you mean now, yeah, but I can separate the art from the artist. But let's say I have a list of films that I've never seen, which I'm going to challenge myself to watch different types of films over the next couple of years, because I got through a stage in my life, 10, 15 years of just watching sci-fi. And I was like, you can't really call yourself a film fan if you don't try different types of things.
And I would throw Patriot on the list because it's a movie about the American Revolution. And of course, the British are the bad guys in the film. But you really hate the villain. He's really good at making you hate him. And B, it's just the whole, there's a lot of emotional stuff in there. Like, I still get mad at the one scene with the burning of the church. Just thinking about it, I want to punch the bad guy.
Yeah.
But that's like I said, that's the good part of the story. Is like, if they're making you hate him like a good old-fashioned bad guy in a wrestling match, then that's the story doing its job for you. And then you get emotionally invested in seeing the bad guy get his comeuppance, and that. Yeah,
and it also helps with the actor. And in this case, the bad guy Cavington is played by Jason Isaacs, and he's one of my favorite actors because of this movie.
Excuse me. So that's one I can look at definitely. But that's the whole one. There's always a different thing in a different film. It's not always the same trope.
Yeah.
Which is why I love watching different styles of movies and want to watch different styles of movies. So like the very first film I saw when I was really young was a film called Starman from John Carpenter. And it's not one of his more well-known ones, but that's the very first film I can remember watching. I probably watched films before it when I was younger, but that was the first time that I ever saw something and it gave me an emotional response, which is partly why I came up with the topic.
Yeah, for me, like I have a vague recollection of watching The Adventures of Milo and Otis when I was a little kid in theaters. But like the first movie I truly remember from start to finish was Jurassic Park, because that came out I was 6 years old.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's the one where it's just like that's the one where it's like I love this stuff.
So the joy of Starman as well was the fact that it was an alien story where the alien wasn't a bad guy for a change, which I thought at the time was completely weird. I was like, oh, so he's not going to kill somebody? Well, he just wants to get home. And the little things with the marbles every time, I was like, oh, wow. and that just captivated me from beginning to end, and that's where my love of movies began.
Yeah, that's a movie like I've definitely heard about it. It's kind of like in my periphery, because I haven't seen a lot of Jeff. Unfortunately, I haven't seen a lot of Jeff Bridges stuff, but yeah, it's definitely one that's out there that I'm like, if I ever come across it, I will definitely watch it.
Yeah, and one of my other favorite things is theme songs for films.
Oh yeah.
And that's another thing that sometimes gets me off. If they're laced in between the scenes of the films, like that song is by Jack Nitzer, and it just every time it comes up at a certain moment in the film, it's there to make sure that you realise it's an important moment, and it grips you.
Well, for me, like in that sense, like I know everybody, it's kind of a trope at this point, but My Heart Will Go On from Titanic. Like it's another one of my favorite movies of all time. But if you actually listen to the score, you will hear that weaved throughout as pretty much the love theme of the movie. And then to actually hear it with words is like,
yes,
you get it.
It's there. It's a death scene. It's there when they're just showing the beauty of the main galley in the ship.
Yeah.
Even though really slow and really quiet. And it's in the, it's at the end when they're doing the, I can't type of scene it is. But obviously, it's all gone bad. It's all the end. Everyone's died and been rescued, and it's showing you the ship transform back into its glory again, and then the theme comes back in. Yeah,
that one of my favorite things. One of my favorite tracks I have is called the Titanic Suite, which is just like an 18-minute piece of like all the music from the movie.
Nice.
Oh yeah, awesome.
Yeah, and it just makes me wish James Horner was still around, man.
Yeah, like I say, the composers that are around today are still borrowing. Like I've been watching Mark Riley's new show where it shows you just how much similar songs are, because the beats of the chords of certain songs are still there in all the new songs.
Yeah,
and
there's a
to see.
I'm a musician, but it's not within the last few years I've really started paying attention to music, and I noticed it a lot with John Williams' scores.
Yes,
there is a piece in Raiders it's Marion's theme, but when you listen to it, it sounds a lot like Leia's theme. And so I was just listening to it blindly one day. I'm like, oh, cool, Leia's theme, and I looked it up, and it's like, no, it's Marion's. I'm like, okay, there. It's like I don't know if that's lazy or what.
Well, okay. I have two more moments I want to bring up with you guys real quick.
Okay.
Yeah.
The first moment is for arriving in Wakanda and Infinity War. Holy shit, I remember being in that theater and just like getting a bolt of lightning in me and like being so excited about that. And the music is beautiful there too.
Yeah, that shot is spectacularly filmed.
And then another moment, completely different, and then E.T. When E.T. leaves. And he says goodbye to Elliot.
Sorry, you were on my end. You're actually breaking up quite a bit, so I actually didn't catch that.
The end of E.T.
The end of E.T. The
Yeah.
only thing that prevents me from liking that movie is Elliot.
Yeah, really?
I cannot stand Henry Thomas in that role.
Really?
I don't know if it's because I watched the special edition more growing up, because I when I joined Dan Merle's Patreon, that was one of the first movies we had to review, and I watched the original version, and it's like a lot of the things I don't like about Henry Thomas is not in that version. So I'm like, it's just a lot of his expressions and stuff. It just drove me nuts. It's like every time he was like, I wanted to punch him in the face.
Well,
But I agree with you on the ending, though. I agree with you on the ending.
It's the use of a different theme as well, because when the first time he goes past, it's the moon, so it's a very dulcet tone, and then at the end it's the sun, and it's high pitched. It's the same theme in a higher tone.
Yep.
To show you the difference of feeling, difference of use in the film.
Yeah, I've played it in a few different compilations and band, and it's just like, oh yeah, it's so good. Easily, it's one of my favorite John Williams scores, even though it's not one of my favorite films.
So yeah, probably the next one like is it's going off similar to what you Ben was saying there about Wakanda, for example. The end scene, the end fight scene in Endgame.
Of course,
which is obviously one of the more recent ones, but obviously I think anyone that was probably more into the comics or the cartoons back in the day where I don't remember it, kind of knew what was coming, whereas I didn't. So at the time, I proper got emotional during that ending because I didn't realize just how epic it was going to be.
Oh yeah, from when you hear "on your left" right up until you hear "assemble," it's just like that is holy shit. Like I don't think I've ever seen. I don't want to call it fan service, but it's just like I don't think I've ever seen like a comic book perfectly represented on screen before till that moment.
I don't know. I don't know how many times you've seen it. Sorry, Ben. I've seen it about 10 times now. It doesn't feel as good as the first time I saw it. It seems to happen quicker each time I watch it. Now I'm expecting it.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Because my first time seeing it was I saw it opening night with a crowd of people like me who love this stuff. So that's what I always remember is the reaction. Everybody's just
and it feels like there's more of a gap between him standing up and hearing Sam's voice. And now when I watch it, it doesn't seem as long. But that night when I first saw it, it seemed to just like elongate. Yeah. Which made it even more dramatic.
Yeah, but it definitely doesn't take away from the impact, though, because that is still a great scene.
Let me ask you guys this. Since the sadly ending of Chadwick Boseman, does that add anything to that moment of him walking out that face?
Not really, because I did watch it after he passed away.
Okay.
I'd say no. Like, I mean, really what I got was like, oh, shit, it sucks we're not going to see him anymore. But, I mean, it didn't, other than that, it didn't really change my appreciation of the scene.
I went back and watched it the day after he died. But, yeah, I didn't feel like a difference. I just think that whole, I think it's about 12, 13 minutes. It doesn't feel that short.
Yeah. I did feel a bit like that when I watched Black Panther, though, right before that, because that was more his movie. So I felt a little bit more melancholy about, you know, like we could have had more, you know?
It's also a very rare scene where sometimes, for example, a Transformers movie doesn't make my list because there's so much going on, you can't tell what's going on, where they did a very good job of showing you a lot going on, but you can pick parts out of what's going on. You can see a fight in the distance. You can see the main character, Spider-Man, and obviously the changes of the Infinity Gauntlet from character to character. But the whole vastness of the scene, you can see so much happening and you don't know where to put your face.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what I loved. It's like, even though there is so much going on, you can still really get invested in it.
Yeah, that's why I say it's the perfect representation of a comic book scene because, yeah, there's a shit ton going on. But, yeah, you're right. You can definitely pick little spots and say, oh, that's happening, you know?
You got, like, giant Ant-Man punching something in the background. And they just kind of slowed it down to what's happening in front of you. And I think that was a really good way of allowing you to see a lot more going on that you probably would have in a normal watch.
Yeah, and then it's another one of those, like, every time you watch it, there's always something new you find, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took me like 3 or 4 times before I finally saw Howard the Duck pop up in that scene.
Is Howard the Duck in the final scene? I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen the movie. I don't know if I ever want to.
No. Not Howard the Duck from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I thought you were talking about the movie. I'm like, I don't know.
No, Howard the Duck from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah,
is in Endgame.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about, you know, the MCUs is now we're at a point where we're going to get a lot of unexpected stuff like that.
Yeah. They've gone past now using the normal characters, and we have to broaden our horizons of other characters that haven't been used yet, or characters that are going to be reintroduced.
Yeah, like Howard the Duck, or at the end of Guardians 2, the possible introduction of Adam Warlock is another one.
Yes, or for example, maybe the possible use of Galactus So it's little things like that. You don't know what kind of Galactus they're going to show us, or whether obviously before they copped out and used just the cloud.
Yeah, that was pretty dumb.
Just the idea of having a giant sentinel-looking Galactus in the future could be crazy.
Yeah, because like that.
Talking about Silver Surfer, which is probably one of more favorite characters, which I would love to see return.
Yeah, I have to admit, I like Lawrence Fishburne's portrayal. Well, his voice acting as a Silver Surfer. It's probably one of the few redeemable things about that movie.
I didn't hate that movie.
Yeah, I don't hate it either, but I mean, it's not the best.
No,
it's one of those. It's like I say, there's some like I said, some films make your list, and some films are just good films.
Yeah,
and then some films are really bad films, and we should do a whole different show about that one day.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, there's funny enough, there's a lot of bad movies. Like I know they're bad, but God, I love them. Best example, Grease 2. That movie is not a good movie, but God damn, I love that film, especially the music.
Wouldn't come at the navigation for me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're the two things that I really like. You've either got to grip me and kind of get me lost in the story and make me cry, or you've got to make me laugh. It's my spectrum of emotions. I'm either crying or laughing.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
My favorite kind of films. So like, for example, so my favorite films to make me laugh are the Zombieland films, because it takes horror, but it takes it tongue in cheek. And my favorite kind of humor, showing probably my mental age, is visual humor, stuff that you can. The joke is in what you see, not what you said. Like they wait to the end of the second film to show you the kill of the year, and it's the Italian guy killing a zombie with the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And I was in stitches for about 10 minutes. It's not the funniest of jokes. It's just the visual humor and how it's done. And then obviously the trope of the Italian guy going, yeah. I was laughing for 15 minutes after that, because that's my mental age of funny.
Yeah, I love a good sight gag, but I find as I've gotten older, I tend to gravitate more towards like the witty humor. Like the movie, I love the movie Alan Partridge. I don't know if either of you have seen that.
No,
Yeah, he's a big. Steve Coogan's a very big, obviously, comedian in England. So
I love Steve Coogan, man, and Alan Partridge is so funny. Like I'm the only one of my friends who liked it. They're like, "Oh, he's a douche." I'm like, "That's the point."
Is it just the film you've seen, or have you seen the TV programs?
I've seen the film, and I haven't seen a lot of the TV program because it's really hard to get where I'm at. But I've seen episodes, and I've also seen. I've got 2 stand-up specials he did where he did a bunch of his characters, and Alan Partridge was in both of them. So
so he's also done a couple of films where he's kind of a similar character. That they're not like the hugest of films, but they would be good, enjoyable watches if that's the kind of character you like in portraying. So
for sure. Like I'm big into British humor.
Yeah, so that TV character that he plays in that film is Alpha Papa.
Yeah. That's his nickname. That's the name on his boat and everything. Yeah.
So basically, it's a sequel to his TV show where he thinks he's not like Howard Stern. Obviously, Howard Stern's more in your face, but he thinks he's the best radio show host in the world. But in fact, he's the worst. But in his head, he's a superstar. Yeah. So the comedy is him doing all these things, thinks it's amazing, but everyone else in the room. It's like, what is this guy doing?
Right? And it's like he ends up becoming like the hostage negotiator.
Yeah.
It's like, how the hell? Yeah, I recommend watching that one too, Ben. If you're into like the wry, witty humor, that's right up there.
Sorry, Ben, come on.
It sounds like Borat. I don't know.
No, Borat is more. Borat is definitely like I don't want to say found footage, but it's definitely like he goes out in the real world.
It's also more gross.
Alan Partridge is an actual movie
for being sick. It's gross out personality humor.
Yeah,
it's what's the worst thing you could say in this situation.
Yeah, and he says some pretty bad shit. Yeah, no, Alan Partridge, he's just a character, and he's like the worst human being, but he's definitely someone you could get behind.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lovable loser, but because you always think, much like Only Fools and Horses did in the past in the 80s, you think by the end they're going to get the good ending, but they never are, because that's what makes you watch. The fact that they won't get the good ending, that's what keeps you hooked over time.
Yeah.
And Alan Partridge is a classic because he will keep a joke going on for several scenes, because to him it's funny. To you, you're like, oh, the punchline should have happened by now, but he's still going on with the joke because he's still trying to get it in his head.
Yeah, and he's the only talk show host to actually have accidentally killed a man on screen.
That was part of the movie, right? He didn't really kill a man, right?
That's not in the movie. That's on one of his BB. That's on one of the early TV shows, I think. Yeah, that's not in the movie.
It's the same kind of thing that we're talking about, whether it's a TV show or a film. There is always something that makes you like something more than other things, and it keeps you coming back because it either hits you personally, or it's a song, or it's just a story arc. At the end of the day, there's always something that grips you.
Well, okay, so earlier you brought up like you had the wide range, like you either laugh a lot or you cry a lot. Now, have you ever broke down in tears describing a scene to somebody? Because I know that's happened to me once.
That's a good question. I wouldn't say describing a scene. I can break down reliving a scene.
Okay.
Before I see it. Unfortunately for me, I don't tend to have the same likes that other people have, especially in obviously the previous conversation we had earlier. Like, it's just I tend to watch things on my own because everyone else likes something else. Yeah,
I understand that.
So I tend to get it myself. I can make myself cry thinking about something that's happened before I've watched it, which is weird. Like, I'll remember something that's happened, and before I even watch it, I'm already emotional. So I can get that kind of reaction.
So the one time I broke down describing, any Doctor Who fans in the house?
Unfortunately not, no.
Okay. Ben?
No, but I have an idea what you might talk about.
So when I was living in Vancouver, it was when I started getting into Doctor Who, and I got into the Matt Smith version. Yeah. And my parents were visiting me for Christmas, and my mom was like, so why are you into this Doctor Who? And I started describing the death of the Pawns.
Yep, okay.
The moment where their last episode of the show, and I was describing the moment about their farewell scene and like what, and I just broke down like a blubbering mess trying to describe it to my mom, and she's like, I get it. And she asked it, and so I introduced her to the show, and she's like, okay, I get why you like this, but it's like I felt weird just describing this emotional scene and just bawling my eyes out.
That's the graveyard scene, right?
The graveyard scene. Yeah.
And I don't watch all of Doctor Who, but I watch pretty much all of the Matt Smith era and some of the Capaldi era. But that's all I know.
Yeah, that was my first Doctor, so as much as I love David Tennant, Matt Smith is always going to be the number one for me.
I feel the same way.
Yeah. I think the one thing, I'm not a Doctor Who fan, but I think compared to the early days of the show, so obviously they've had 17 Doctors in, say, the 60s to the 80s. That run of Doctors isn't as good as the 90s 2000s version.
It is so hard to go back and watch those. I've got a few episodes. They're so hard to watch.
It's not as gritty, but then it's a bit more tongue in cheek.
Yeah,
but I think Peter Capaldi, Christopher Eccleston, Matt Smith have been fantastic Doctor Who's. I'm not sure. The show, but I can appreciate their acting.
Yeah, and let's not forget John Hurt is the War Doctor. John Hurt did one episode as the War Doctor, and he was phenomenal.
Let me ask you, how do you like the new one, Jodie Whittaker?
So I haven't seen all of it. I did watch the first, I think, 4 episodes of her run, and I actually really enjoyed her. I just haven't gone back and watched the rest. But I think she does a great job. She kind of gets a good mix of the 3 that were before her. She kind of gets a good balance of them while making it her own.
And you said you like Christopher?
Eccleston?
Yeah.
Christopher Eccleston, yeah, he was...
For what he was, yeah, he was pretty good. Like, that's another one where you go back and watch it. It's kind of reminiscent of the original series. But Yeah, he did a good job he did a good job.
He was the first Doctor when they reintroduced Doctor Who
Yeah.
back. He was, and I think they went very gritty very quickly.
Yeah, and thank God it worked. Because if he hadn't hit it out of the park, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
Here's my question. If he was really good, why is it like he's never talked about when any other doctors come up?
Well, because he didn't explode like Tennant or Smith did.
Okay, that's fair.
Like when he a lot of people go back and discover him. Not many people watched that season. It wasn't until David Tennant hit where people got wind of it, and then when Matt Smith came on board and they started doing the Comic Cons and stuff like that, that's when everybody knew about Doctor Who.
I think Christopher Eccleston is more straight-laced and more dramatic. David Tennant can do quirky very well, and the appeal of Doctor Who is the quirkiness. So I don't think Christopher Eccleston made it feel sci-fi enough. I think they tried to make it more filmy, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, no, I totally get it.
I think David Tennant brought back the spirit of Doctor Who, and I think that's probably where it went better from there.
100%, because Tennant was a fan, whereas Eccleston, I'm not sure if he was. And plus, there was a lot of backstage stuff and whatever. That's why he only lasted the 1 year. But yeah, David Tennant was a massive fan. And funny enough, he married the daughter of his favorite doctor. So, yeah. So, so his father-in-law is the fifth Doctor, and his wife played the Doctor's daughter.
I mean, some kind of bullshit right there.
Yeah. And only in Doctor Who would that ever make sense.
Okay, one of my favorite Doctor Who moments is in Matt Smith's final episode when he looks like Doc Brown and he's just taunting the enemy, I forget who he was fighting, but right before he was young again, he was like taunting them. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I do, but that's not what I remember about that episode.
Let me guess, Amy coming back?
Yeah. 100%. Nobody knew that was coming, and she actually took time off from Guardian. Nobody knew that was not leaked. Nobody knew.
Wow.
Because she was filming Guardians at the time.
Right.
So that's a wig she was wearing, but yeah, nobody knew that was happening until it aired.
And that's what I think sometimes TV misses nowadays is the
I'm with
shock factor. There's
100%.
too much pre-spoiler going on, and casting news is what it is, but sometimes in films you want to be, sometimes just in stories you want to be surprised by what happens. You don't want to know what's going on.
Yeah, and that's what I like about like a lot of older trailers. Like a lot, I don't watch trailers anymore because after Terminator Genesis, it kind of ruined it for me. Where you found out what happened to John Connor in the fucking trailer.
Yeah.
Whereas you watch the first Batman '89 trailer, all you see is a few scenes of Batman kicking ass, and you see a few scenes of the Batmobile, and that's all you need to get what the movie's about.
Which is, like I said, was probably why everyone loves that new trailer, because they didn't show you any bad guys. There may be a bad guy, but nothing specific.
Like, you knew that was the Penguin, but you didn't know it was Colin Farrell because they did such a good job on the makeup. But you got what they were going for without giving anything away. And that's also what I like about the Star Wars trailers that J.J. Abrams did. You got what they were going for, and you still didn't know anything about the movie.
Well,
carry on. I'll say what I was going to say in a second.
I can say something, but I'm not going to.
More so about The Force Awakens. I think that Force Awakens trailer, that first one.
Sure. No, I know, but I'm not with it. But damn, I'm going to bring something up. Okay. Imagine the shock, and we didn't know about it in Crisis. When we're having Earth, and we go to Earth 167, and we see Tom Welling there without knowing about it. How big of a shock would that have been?
No, that would have been quite the shock. I understand why they announced it, because they want to bring in all the old fans and stuff like that, but it would have been cool to not to be surprised. Even if they had announced, what I would have preferred, I'm fine with them announcing Tom Welling. They should not have announced Brandon Routh as coming back as Superman. That would have been a shock.
Yeah, it's something they try to give you too much, and some that can take away the shine sometimes.
Yeah. Like, it was cool that you knew, like, awesome, we get to look forward to this. But can you imagine if nobody knew that was coming, and then all of a sudden they ended up in Metropolis, and then this is where Superman is, and they walk into Daily Planet, and it's Brandon Routh as Clark Kent.
You'd
Oh,
have been like,
shit. You're right. You're right. Damn, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, and thank God he did that, because I feel like that turn as Superman redeemed him as Superman Returns.
yeah.
Because it reminded everybody how good of a Superman he was.
I like that movie. I have always liked that movie and defended that movie.
Still the movie I've seen the most in theaters, 6 times.
So what you were saying about the Star Wars trailer earlier, so that was the best trailer. What I loved the trailer for Rise of Skywalker.
Oh yeah, the first one.
The first one. The reason I loved it so much was that music. I've still got that theme now, not used in the film at all, but that I use that theme now to get me more hyped when I watch the film than the actual film itself. So that's a weird one for me. It's like there's just something about how they heightened the music in that trailer.
I listened to that score so much after that movie came out. I've probably listened to the score more than I've seen the movie.
Yeah, if that was used in the film, even in the last fight scene, because it made them running across that Star Destroyer with the horses. It was perfect. If that had been in the film, it probably would have made that scene feel even more better, because the music drives it. And then you get to the film and it was just that weird shrieking noise, and you were like, oh, okay, it's not what I was expecting.
Well, how did you feel about the moment where everybody appears and you hear the Star Wars theme in the middle of the movie? I thought that was... Yeah, when they look up in the sky and it's like everybody shows up to fight. They actually play the Star Wars theme.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but get pumped up watching that.
You were like, oh.
Yeah, well, that was the endgame moment. That was under that. That was the endgame moment.
When they finally collide and it hits its apex.
Yeah.
Perfect example, Ben. Yeah. As the first, as Captain America's at the front, and as soon as it hits, there's that real high note at the end of the theme before it goes into the crescendo. It's just they timed it perfectly. And then for the next 15 minutes, you're like, yeah, I'm there in the cinema, ducking and diving with every move. That's something that I know I'm hooked. Yeah,
and like, say what you want about Rise of Skywalker, you can't argue with that. Like, once you get to that scene, the end game scene, and you see everybody and you hear the Star Wars theme, you can't help but get hooked into it.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let me ask you guys a question. Talking about trailers, do you think they should have had Palpatine's return?
Yes, because they would have sold tickets no matter what.
Yeah, more than likely.
I agree. They should have had that.
Yeah, like, you would do something like that if it's like, say, a movie that you've got like 30 years between sequels. But because Star Wars, and it's a well-established franchise, people would have bought their tickets no matter what. You didn't need to bring people into the theater. Well, okay, maybe after Last Jedi, maybe. But I mean, you didn't need to sell the movie. All you need to go, hey, a new Star Wars movie's here.
You can get away with probably not using as much music because you've got the background of the lore, whereas some films need the soundtrack to drive it.
Yeah, like, perfect example, Jaws. You watch that movie without the sound. It's not that great.
People jumping in the water.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a big noise of a song. Like the example I used earlier was Sunshine. There's only really 3 songs in the film. The rest of the soundtrack of the film is space noises. And the actual sound effects. So one of the best jump scares in the film is just somebody, do you know the sprays you get in pot washers? That spray pot washers clean.
Yep.
A big jet of water. So it's completely silent. You've got 5 or 6 minutes of something happening on the screen, and that's the only noise you hear is a shh. Because you don't see it coming, it makes you jump. And that's the kind of stuff that got me hooked into that film. It's that whole film uses those little cues to get you. So sometimes it's the lack of a soundtrack.
Yeah, that was
only used
example. Alien.
Moments.
Alien's a good example of that. There's really not much score in that movie.
But when the score comes in, you know something's about to happen, and that's what cues you to emote a feeling or get ready to react to something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so yeah, definitely a music score could definitely make break the movie. That's for sure.
And then I think, like I say, towards the end when Chris Evans dies, that's when that's the first time really the music gets used. But obviously, I don't know if you've heard of Adagio for Strings. It's got like it's like a really long-winded string section. So it's kind of like do 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 do. So every bit of note goes on for a while.
Oh yeah, I'd have to look into that. Yeah,
so
I've actually never seen the movie.
Yeah, so the scene goes on for quite a while. He struggles for quite a bit, and the music takes you through the suffering, and it makes you feel worse the longer it goes on. But that's still an emotion. That's why it got me hooked.
I do want to give a shout out to Bane's theme in Dark Knight Rises, the chant.
Yes, the old corruption theme that they used.
Yeah.
It took me for years to find that. I couldn't find it anywhere.
Yeah, no, that is a great use of vocals in a theme.
Yeah. It's obviously a lot of Bane's use in that film is not court leaderish, but it feels like he's an army by himself, and the chanting is what he arrives with to build him up, and it makes the character feel not vibrant, but menacing. Sorry, that's the word I was thinking of.
Until you get into the third act, and he kind of becomes like the henchman. But yeah, no, 100% right. The music really helps you feel like he is this otherworldly like force that nobody can beat.
Another moment for you guys when the music makes the moment in A New Hope, sunsets.
Yes, and there's
when sunsets.
Every time I watch that, I get chills. It's like,
yeah, it's a perfect example of what we were trying to bring up earlier. Like describing that sunset moment would bring you to tears because it's the first time. It's the very beginning of the film, and it sets you up for the trilogy almost.
Yeah, and if I don't know if it's just me, but every time I hear that music cue, it's like I feel hopeful.
Yes.
Yes.
It starts low and gets higher, and that's what music does. Is it builds you up into a mood?
The only thing that pisses me off about that is you cannot find that track on its own on any official Star Wars release. It's always mixed in with like other parts of the movie. You cannot get that part on its own.
I found it.
Where? Because I've looked on iTunes everywhere and I can't get it.
It got the binary sunset. Oh, it's in it too.
I'm gonna look that up right now because I know I have searched binary sunset on there and it's never come up.
This is like another thing that
maybe I'm
talking an official John Williams thing. Not,
the fact that you can have conversations where they go off in tangents and you talk about a different film or a different style, music, different parts is something that's made me appreciate movies a lot more than I did before. I didn't realize how much I loved movies probably until about 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
And I knew I liked movies and I knew I liked watching them, but it wasn't till I can't remember. I think it was probably like the third time I watched Sunshine that something caught my eye, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I didn't see that before." And then every time I've watched the film since, I've tried to think more deeply into it, which is what's got me to where I am now. So,
well, okay, back to musicals a little bit. What type of score do you prefer? Like, do you prefer the full orchestration? Do you prefer like a rock score, a synth score? Like, what's the one you gravitate toward? Like me, it's definitely the orchestra.
I'm huge into the orchestral, instrumental, anything like. Obviously, because I've grown up a lot of space films, the Interstellars and Alan Silvestri and James Horner, where it's long-winded orchestral strings, woodwind, all that kind of stuff. I could listen to that just on its own. I don't even need the film. I can listen to the soundtracks.
Yeah.
All the way through. It gave me a really big appreciation for orchestral music that I didn't have before. Like I can love a good 80s synthesizer soundtrack as well, but nothing will be compared to a full orchestra.
Agreed.
I'd be quite happy to go and see an orchestra live, just playing even Beethoven, because I can appreciate the joy of the music. Last year they did. Have you heard of the BBC Proms?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I've seen some Doctor Who stuff on there before.
Yeah, so last year they did a science fiction one for about 2 hours.
Wow.
And it was literally the London Orchestra. And they did Interstellar, they did the Sunshine theme.
That's cool.
They did a couple of Avengers, they did a couple of songs from Alien. And it went on for about 2 hours. They did obviously 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Of course.
And it went on for about 15 minutes, and I was just in awe because like they take you around the violins, and you can hear, and it takes you through. You don't hear it normally before. You hear the whole thing. Now I can pick out violins. I can pick out cellos. I can pick out subtle variations in drums that are used. There's not just one type of drum. There's 3.
Yeah.
And that's what's made me love it even more. And then when I watch the film again, I can add that to my joy of the story. And it puts me, like I say, my favourite thing is if I can be watching a film and I forget where I am when I'm watching it. That's when I know I'm loving a film. When you forget that the outside world exists.
What about you, Ben? What type of soundtrack, like what type of score do you tend to gravitate towards?
One that really put me up. So, I don't know. Orchestra, like it's really of the music rising up, stuff like that. If that makes sense.
And the beauty thing about orchestral music, it's timeless. Whereas opposed to like a synth score, that's usually from the 80s, so you could definitely tell where it's from.
Right.
Same with the rock score for the most part, but definitely an orchestral score is more timeless.
I think the beauty of that compared to a synthesizer is a synthesizer note will die quicker.
Yeah.
Than what's the word? I was going to say aerodynamics. It's not aerodynamics, but it can linger in the air from a woodwind instrument. I can't think of a word at the minute off the top of my head.
But another thing too is you can hear the emotion in a string instrument as opposed to a synthesizer. You can definitely hear what the artist is or what the player is putting into their violin playing, where you don't get that with a synth song because all you do is push a button.
Yeah, it's almost the personality of a player, the player and the orchestra itself coming out in the tune as well. Like you can probably get a variation from a different orchestra playing the same theme. Yeah, from the style of person playing the instrument. So there's little ticks in it which can be good. Yeah, because you can look at an orchestra and say, not everybody can do that. But a synth score, it's like, okay, almost everybody can do that, right? Yeah. The atmospherics is the word I was thinking of. So for sure. When it plays and it lingers in the air above
the acoustics. Yeah.
Acoustics. That's we got there. But yeah. I
play in a community band, which is like the adult version of a high school band, and that's one thing. Like whenever we're rehearsing and we hit that perfect acoustic, we just sit there. We all just listen to it ring in the clouds, so to speak. That's what we call the risers that come down. You just hear it, and it's just like there's nothing like it when you get just the right timing. Yeah. And I think that's obviously my love of music as well as movies is just hand in hand. It's always been there for me to drive a joy of a story. Yeah. But then sometimes it's necessarily not. It's the merge of the two. But like I say, most of it is slow and like orchestral, like you said. But sometimes, for example, Wrath of Khan, where it's a proper 80s, there is orchestral in it. But they're using the fear notes of, I even probably think it is a violin where they're just jagging the string to get that screech.
in the fights, at the big fight scene at the end between the two ships.
Yeah.
And that is what grips me in that film. So it's a completely different reason than what I'm used to, but it makes you fear the fight.
Mm-hmm. That's an underrated score, and that's also James Horner, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. God, that man. If you look back at his filmography, like that man was versatile.
And then, it is funny. You've seen, I'm assuming you've seen Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
The 09.
I've seen what story?
Star Trek.
Do you mean Frank Sinatra?
No, Star Trek, the
Oh,
movie.
Star Trek. Sorry, I think you said Sinatra. I'm like, yeah, of course I know who Sinatra is. Yeah, I've seen Star Trek. I've seen almost all the movies. Not really the shows, but more the movies.
Okay, and you seen Doctor Strange, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
Have you ever heard those scores back to back?
Are we talking the J.J. Abrams Star Trek?
Yes.
No, I can't say I ever have.
They're eerily similar.
I don't remember Doctor Strange that much. What I'd have to check that out next time, see if there's any similarities that I can pick up on.
Yeah, ditto. I'll have to do that too. I never really put
I'll
that
send you
together.
a link.
It
Because
gives me something to look at as well, because I like going back to films and trying to find something I may have not seen before. It makes it just as enjoyable to rewatch then.
Yeah. I should probably throw up a disclaimer there. If you have epilepsy, do not look at Ben's screen right now. I don't know what happened there.
my camera's dying, man. I need a new camera.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's something I've got to maybe invest in next year. If I start to go on more shows, I can't keep using my phone.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Like when I
but-
started, it was just on my laptop, and now I've got this whole setup. Yeah. So-
it works for now. Everyone's got to start somewhere.
Fair enough. So, like what we're doing now, is this something you were actually interested in getting into, or?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Since I started getting involved in the community, it has me captivated. Like you guys can be thousands of miles away, but it's the only people I know in the world that have the same opinions as I do or the same love.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be able to maybe, even if it's just on a local level, try and get local people around my area to have something to watch, and then build a community that way, and then merge it in the future. But the one thing I like to do is talk about the things that I love. Unfortunately, not many people I know do. But if I've got something to talk about, it very much soothes me, if you get what I mean.
I am 100% with you. Like all my close friends or whatever, like we talk movies a little bit, but not like this. And that's the beauty thing that's opened up to me since I started doing this early in the year, is not only do I get to actually indulge my interests, but also I've met a lot of new people I never thought I met. Like I've become friends with a man from Israel. Hi, 50. Like I never thought I'd say that up to this year. Right?
Like I would rather talk to people 1,000 miles away about my passions than talk to somebody down the road about something I have no interest in.
Yeah.
I get that. I feel the same way. The same way.
Like, I mean,
Community- a
honestly,
community
Ben,
doesn't have to be something that's on the same street as you at the end of the day, as long as reaching
Like
the
Ben,
digital age.
before this year, would you ever thought we'd have been on a charity fundraiser for cancer?
No. That was fucking fish for me.
That was incredibly humbling.
Yeah.
Now, why I say it's incredibly humbling is because I have another YouTube channel, Schmoes of the North, where we do Schmodown related content, but we pre-tape everything. We don't do anything live. We don't interact with the fans. So that was only our second time doing anything live, and it was a trip to see people in the comments actually recognize me.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it was really, really weird.
That show for the Smash Cancer fundraiser was the first time I'd even seen you. I remember your name, but it's the first time I'd watched one of your shows.
Yeah.
So
I got the same feeling with a lot of people. And like, was it you, Ben, that said being in the Zoom meeting was like being at a backstage at a rock concert?
Yeah.
Because we're there waiting to go on, and then like there's Ben Bateman, there's Andrew Guy, there's Mark Riley, and there's Tom who called me soda. I'm like, holy fuck.
Yeah, and as weird as that is, I've spoken to some of these people that much now that I don't feel nervous when talking to them. Like if you were to meet a celebrity in real life, you would get nervous about what to say.
Oh, totally.
Whereas they're just normal guys like me and you. They just happen to do something a lot, which means they get people watching them regularly, which means they become pseudo famous.
Yeah, there is still that aura, like, you know, this is somebody I watch on YouTube, but yeah, you're 100% right. They're just normal people. Like, I've been fortunate enough to interview a fair amount of Schmodown people, and that's the one thing I've noticed is all of them, all the ones I've personally talked to are all cool. They're all great to talk to, all down to earth, funny.
Yeah, I agree.
It all came from an accidental watch of a Star Wars show back in the day. I was looking for somebody that wanted to talk about Star Wars when the first trailer for Force Awakens came out. I came across, obviously, Jedi Council, and from that, I found the Schmodown, and then that was it. From there, I'm now here.
That's actually similar to me. So I was looking up for stuff on Force Awakens, and I came across movie fights. And then I got introduced to Ken Knapsack because he was on there, and that's how I got introduced to Collider, then the Schmodown Spectacular, and then Schmozno and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm in the exact same boat as you. It all comes back to Star Wars, really.
Well, for me, it all comes back to Man of Steel, because I saw Man of Steel, and I am one of those millions of people, not millions, but one of those people who found Champion, found Snap, found Clark Wolf on that Man of Steel spoiler review. And I've been on it ever since.
I've gone back and watched that review just to hear what everyone was talking about, and I totally agree. I understand why so many people find that as the jumping off point into this community.
Yeah.
But that has been the beauty of it, like the Discord, these shows. It just makes everyone feel more at ease because you can have an opinion on something, but now you can find somebody that can talk to you about it for 2 hours and it not be a problem. You want to talk to somebody, there is always going to be somebody around now that wants to talk about it. And then you come out of that conversation feeling a lot better about your day because you felt like you talked. Like,
yeah, totally. And it's like we're all here because we all have a lot in common.
Yeah.
And like the one thing I found is like this community is not just a community; it's a family in the sense of the word, right?
Okay.
And we saw that in spades this past weekend.
Yeah. And I talk about a topic of like saying why you love the things you love. This doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be films. This community is part of that. It's like, this is what I love because I can come on a show. You won't believe how nervous I was about talking live about movies tonight. After about 2 minutes of talking to you guys, that didn't feel nervous anymore. You're not going to have to shut me up because I can't stop talking.
Yeah, and that's good to hear. Like the very first time I went on camera by myself to do an interview, I said I interviewed Emily Rose Jacobson. That was the very first one I ever did. And I told her right off the bat, like, look, this is my first time doing this. Like, I'm nervous as shit. I hope I don't screw up, and I apologize in advance for anything. But then after, yeah, you're right. After a couple minutes, it was just normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't feel bad about going off on tangents when you're having a conversation about whatever. It doesn't really matter, does it? As long as you can allow people to have their opinions and you don't disagree about their opinions at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's one thing I found this past year is I love talking to people. Like, yeah, I just love talking to people. That's why I try to pattern my style after like the Harlofts and stuff like that. Just go in and shoot the shit. That's really all we're here to do is have a conversation.
And the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
The show.
And
so
it gives me like the feelings like, if I can talk about this, what else can I talk about? Who else can I talk to? And
for sure.
What goes from there? If I feel like I can do it properly, or people would want to listen to me, then I can branch out and talk to other people about other things. So
yeah, 100%. If I hadn't have accepted Lou's invitation on Facebook to do a Canadian Canadian YouTube show, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
You just got to take that first step, and then the world opens up to you. And it's like next thing you know, like I said, you're on a charity live stream.
I still can't believe you did that.
I know, right?
Incredible.
It's definitely up there with a highlight of my life, right up there with being surrounded by my fellow Canadians when we won the gold medal in 2010 Olympic hockey.
Yeah, and it goes for different things as well. There's things on here that make you laugh. There's things on here that make you think. And then there's sometimes you don't want to think, you just want to talk crap. And that's the beauty of it. There is so many different personalities, so many different opinions. There's always going to be somebody that thinks like you or wants to even if you want to have a playful argument about something that you think's good and someone doesn't, which is why I like John Focus so much, because he'll argue about the shape of a cardboard box with you if you give him the chance.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I started like watching his Impolite Truth show.
Yeah. There's so many different personalities. Like you say, Ben and Drew, they're more like the movie critics that you get from the 80s, but they one's a straight guy, one's the funny guy, if you know what I mean. Like there's a different type of show every day. And the funny thing is now is like, I'm off work, I still can't keep up. I kept up better when I was working than I did when I wasn't working. I think because now there's just too much to watch.
Yeah, 100%. I've fallen off with so much stuff.
And then since I've started watching the fan shows as well, there's now like, okay, so I've got at least 12 hours a day sorted. I'm covered.
That's insane.
It's great though, and for me, it gives me something to do every day. Are you kidding?
That's true, but like my thing is, I don't have the time.
Right? Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because I'm in I'm not in an as locked down stage as you guys. I'm still working, and then I've still got my other things outside I would do normally. So it's like I don't really have the time. So on that note, we've hit the hour mark. So, dude, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for being for your first time on camera, being with us. It's
been my pleasure. It's been lovely to talk to you guys.
Of course, yeah, and we'll definitely love to have you back on. And the topic you came up with earlier would actually be a fun discussion.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever you just give me a hit up, and I'll always be here to chat.
Right on. So, dude, where can everybody find you?
So, as you can see, at Skippy646, that's on Twitter and Instagram. It's all the same. And then you can see me on Discord under my actual name. But like I say, I'm in the Discord for John, for the Schmodown. You'll always see me chatting. So just say hello, and then we can get a chat from there.
Right on. And how about you, Ben?
You can find me at Twitter at BenRader2. You can find me every Saturday doing Mount Schmodown. This week we're covering Paul Preston, I believe. And then every Sunday you can find me with Matt on Get Ready with a couple of other great people. And every Tuesday you can find me and Matt here, Shooting Them Breeze.
Yep. And you can find me at, as it says right above me, soda_the_saxman on Instagram and Twitter. You can find me wherever, at all the places Ben just listed, because we're pretty much on every show together almost. And then you can also find me on my other YouTube channel on Schmoes of the North, where we break down the week in Schmodown news, and we do interview people from around the community. We actually got a really good one coming up, being pre-taped this weekend. I can't wait for you guys to watch. So with that, thank you very much for humbling us with your presence and watching.
I just want to commend Ben for his great work on Facebook. He's always letting everybody know whatever show is coming up.
Yeah, dude, the Media Sweaties group is really good, and even Ben on your own personal thing for sure. Kudos for keeping up on that.
I do my best, guys. I do my best.
You're doing Harloff's work. And with that note, thank you very much for joining us, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Cheers, guys. Yeah.